Hello, and welcome to the video. Today, we're going to be finishing up Ephraim's Pandemonium from Warhammer Underworlds. And this is the Tzeentch warband, where we previously had painted the little demon guys that go along with this sorcerer. So you can see it's a great looking sculpt. I'm excited to get him painted up. I think he's going to look great. And we're going to start off by priming him white. This is going to make sure that the colors that we put on top of this are going to stay nice and bright and really give a cool look to the figure. And as I've been doing recently, I'm going to just kind of speed through putting on the base coat for the miniature, because the real focus of this video is I wanted to show you guys how I used contrast paints to get some great looking skin tones on him with very little effort. I have to say these contrast paints really amaze me on how good they do, especially with skin tones. Now here, I started off painting his robes, and I have to say I really struggled a little bit with these robes. Of course, I started with the darker color and then built up lighter colors as I went, with the peaks of the folds getting the brightest highlights on them. But I really had to go back and forth, and this is where a wet palette really came in handy, was that I could put all three of the colors I was using down and then sort of mix them as I went along, as I kind of wanted to blend them a little bit more. And with the wet palettes, they keep your paints from drying out so much. I've only recently started using one of these, and I kind of regret that I didn't start using it previously, but they really do make the paints more accessible. You can keep working with them, and it actually saves on paints in the long run, because you can put a cover on it and then come back the next day, and usually your paints are still viable. So yeah, anytime that I'm painting cloth like this, it can be a struggle to get the blending to really go well. Sometimes it's too separated and the lines are too obvious, so you really at least I have to kind of keep going back and forth with it sometimes and keep blending it, keep working it, and eventually I'll get the results that I'm looking for. I think the key takeaway here is don't give up on it, keep working it, and eventually they're gonna blend together good enough where you're getting some nice highlights, but you're also keeping that dark color in the recesses. If you're really struggling with cloth like this too, you can just paint a little bit darker and then just go over it with a lighter dry brush. I mean, it'll be good enough if you're looking for tabletop quality, and I think it's better to do something like that than to either give up on the model or not paint it at all. Now these Tzeentch figures, they've been really fun to paint and a little bit different for me, because usually I'm putting a dark wash over everything to make it more gritty or more dark looking. But these guys here, I've been enjoying painting the bright colors and everything and just really letting them stand out. Also, one thing with this figure too, I wanted to kind of get back to just using plain acrylic paints. For a while now, I've been using speed paints, and I think that I was kind of leaning on them a little bit too much. So I kind of wanted to get back to my roots where I wasn't using speed paints for a long time. And I just wanted to kind of go back and prove to myself that I don't need them, that I can still just use regular paints and get some great effects. And that's something, not everybody has speed paints. And if you don't, I mean, you can still use what you have and still get some great looking miniatures on the table. Now to help blend the robe to where I'm happy with it, I went over it with this blue glaze. And putting a glaze over top of areas where you're trying to blend, it really pulls everything together. It's just like it adds just that little bit of darkness on top of the highlights that it blends it really well with the shadows underneath. It really helps to smooth out some of your blending. Yeah, so after this warband here, I just have the Slaanesh warband to paint up in the Chaos warbands for Warhammer Underworlds. It's kind of funny, Slaanesh is my favorite faction of the Chaos group, but for some reason I'm kind of procrastinating on doing the warband. I'm not really sure. I like the miniatures for it. I think that they look really cool and that they'd be fun to paint, but I don't know. I think I might mix it up for the next video and just kind of paint something else. Maybe I just need a palette cleanser, and then I'll come back and finish up these Chaos War bands. And actually too, I'm thinking about doing another video showing off building another display base for these war bands, because now I'll have 4 of them ready to go, and I think these guys would look cool putting them like a big display base, but tailoring the 4 different sections towards their factions. I think it'd be a lot of fun, and I think that people might enjoy watching that. Now here I'm working on the large feather that this guy's holding, and I was actually really happy with the way that it came out. I did a little bit of wet blending there to make the colors flow together, and they actually went together really well. There's no hard lines or anything, and the colors just blended so nicely. I was really happy with that. And wet blending is something that I do sometimes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't for me, but I just kind of got lucky with that, and they just sort of flowed really nicely. It's definitely something that I recommend giving it a shot and see how you do with it. It doesn't take too much practice. Just keep your paints thin and just keep them still wet on the edges, and they should blend together relatively easy. Now here I'm just hitting all of the gold parts. I find it easier to use a darker gold color or like a brass underneath, and then highlighting it with a bright gold on top of it. Now this is the part that I really wanted to take my time and show you guys. I got this contrast paint at the local gaming store, this Briar Queen Chill, and to be honest, when I picked it up I wasn't 100% certain what I was even going to use it on. But then when I looked at the reference picture for this guy, I thought it would be perfect to try on his skin. And putting this white, I primed them white, and then putting this just straight over top of it, that's pretty much it. And this contrast paint, it flows into all of the recesses, and it just dries a little bit darker there. So it kind of does your shading and highlighting all in one stroke. I highly recommend, if you struggle with skin tones, maybe pick up a bottle of this contrast paint and give it a shot. Like this guy, he has blue skin, which is kind of abnormal, but this contrasting paint did a fantastic job on it. It made it so easy, and especially if you have a lot of miniatures where they're showing a lot of skin, a lot of barbarians that have just their bare chest hanging out, their faces and all of that. I mean, you slap a coat of contrast paint on them and you're pretty much good to go. I mean, you can always go back in and highlight it a little bit, but you don't really need to darken it or do any shading on it. I think that these are a fantastic tool to have available to you. This was the part of painting the miniature where it just kind of all snapped together, and I was so happy with the coloration and the shading on the skin tone that it just made the model complete. And I seem to hit that with a lot of miniatures where I'll be painting along, and sometimes I'm not happy with them. But then all of a sudden you'll hit an area that just works out perfectly, and it makes you happy with the entire miniature. It's just so satisfying when that one piece just clicks in together and it just sort of brings the whole miniature together. It makes it worth the effort of painting miniatures, in my opinion. I just get such a kick out of it. I enjoy it so much when they just come together. Now here, I am cheating and I'm using my speed paints on these worms because I didn't really care too much about them. They're not the focal point of the miniature, and I just wanted to kind of get them done as quick as possible. So I just slapped a coat of speed paint on them real quick. The cover art had them as brown, but I thought something like a blue or green would be more in line with a Tzeentch type spirit around him or demon. And really all that I have left is just picking out all of the little details. There's teeth here and there. There's little bits of gold that I'm touching up. His spell book that needed painted. There's a good bit of little details on this guy, but it wasn't overwhelming. I mean, I'm glad I don't have to paint a unit of him. Just having a single character is enough, but I didn't mind once the bulk of the miniature was done, just going along and just painting up the little bit of details on it. And these little details too, it's nice to take your time and put the effort into keeping them nice and clean and not messing them up, because they do add a lot to the miniature. Alright, and with that, my guy is done. I went ahead off camera and just finished up the base. It was just really some tiling on top, nothing too fancy, but I'm really happy with how he came out. And I gotta say, at first when I was working the robe and kept working and working, it took a lot of effort back and forth on it, but it was well worth it. He looks fantastic. I'm super happy with the robe. I am happy with all of the details. I think they look great. I love the bright colors, but really the skin tone I am just thrilled with. I couldn't be happier with it. I mean, for the amount of effort, it was literally one layer of contrast paints and I get some amazing shading and highlighting on it. As I've said previously, Tzeentch isn't my favorite faction. It never was, but I really enjoyed painting these figures up. I enjoyed using bright colors, making them stand out. They were definitely fun. And my guy looks great with the little demons around him. So I want to thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed watching me paint a little bit and listen to me talk. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Bye.